Thank you. Helpline. Yeah, yes, sir. Helpline. Good morning, everybody. I welcome you one and all to the lecture on hypertension. In the last lecture class, we were discussing about coronary heart disease and the epidemiology and the risk factors and the management and prevention of coronary heart disease. Today, I'm going to discuss with you about hypertension. Hypertension is a chronic condition of concern because of its role in the causation of coronary heart disease, stroke, and other cardiovascular complications. So, as we understand, hypertension is a very important chronic condition. So, and it is a matter of concern for everybody and in every part of the world because of its role in the causation of coronary heart disease, which we have read earlier, stroke, which we are going to read after this chapter, after this lecture class, subsequent lecture classes, and also other cardiovascular complications. It is the most common cardiovascular disorder posing a major public health challenge to population, socioeconomic, and epidemiological transition. Now, almost all the countries, developing countries, are in a state of socioeconomic and epidemiological transition. It means that from low economy, they are going to high economy, and and the lifestyles of the people are changing from the previous lifestyles. That results in the results again in cardiovascular disorders. And among those cardiovascular disorders, hypertension is one of them. It is one of the most important risk factors for cardiovascular mortality, which accounts for around 20 to 50% of all the deaths. So 20 to 50% of all the deaths is caused by hypertension. There is also a direct relation between cardiovascular risk and blood pressure. Higher the blood pressure, higher the risk of both stroke and coronary events. So what it has been found that there is there is an association with cardiovascular risk. So the more the blood pressure, the higher risk of stroke and coronary events. When systolic and diastolic blood pressure fall in different categories, the higher category should be selected to classify the individual's blood pressure. So if you see the systolic and diastolic blood pressures, it has been seen that the category of blood pressure which is higher, that should be taken into account when classifying the blood pressure. Now, there is no standard definition of blood pressure. Definition of blood pressure is arbitrary. Sir George Pickering has found that in the measurement of blood pressure among the population, there is no distinction between what you say a normal tension or hypertension. It comes as a continuous curve when we trace the blood pressures of the individuals in the community or of a particular population. What is isolated systolic hypertension? Isolated systolic hypertension is defined as systolic blood pressure of more than 140 millimeters of mercury and diastolic blood pressure of less than 90 millimeters of mercury. Now let us understand what is the classification of the blood pressure measurements. So this classification is very important, and all of you must by rote this classification in order to understand about its management and prevention subsequently later on. So when we classify blood pressure, we divide it into different categories and place them under systolic and diastolic blood pressures. So optimal, what is optimal? Optimal is less than 120 and less than 80 millimeters of mercury. What is normal? 120 to 129 and 80 to 84 millimeters of mercury. That is for normal. So normal blood pressure means 120 to 129 millimeters of mercury and or 80 to 84 millimeters of mercury. High normal is taken as 130 to 139 and or 85 to 89. So 85 to 89 and 130 to 149 are usually taken as high normal. This high normal in many cases is also called pre-hypertensive. It means that it is a watershed line between the normal and hypertension. So pre-hypertension, if the sufficient interventions are done like lifestyle modifications and control of other risk factors, then there is every chance of the person from getting from pre-hypertensive to normal. So if the high normal or pre-hypertensive subjects are not exactly taken into account or not given proper interventions or made sufficient lifestyle modifications, then there is every chance that the person may slip into grade 1, grade 2 or grade 3 hypertension. So grade 1 hypertension is 140 to 159 millimeters of mercury and or 90 to 99 millimeters of mercury. And grade 3 hypertension is more than 180 millimeters of mercury and or more than 110. So you see that in most cases in normal and high normal, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, what we have mentioned is and or, it should be both or one of them. So when we say somebody is having grade 1 hypertension, it means he should be having a systolic blood pressure of 140 to 159 or a diastolic of 90 to 99 or both 140 to 159 and 90 to 99. Suppose if the person is having 149 millimeters of mercury and 90 millimeters, 149 millimeters of mercury, that is systolic, and diastolic has 90 millimeters of mercury, then 149 millimeters of mercury should be, systolic blood pressure should be taken into account for grading that person or putting into the category of grade 1 hypertension. Please by note this table, as it is very, very important for you to understand and interpret also in clinico-social epidemiological cases where you need to write the blood pressure and also state the category of blood pressure, in which category the particular person is present. Earlier to that, we had grades JNC 7 classification of blood pressure. Now there is also JNC 8, but Park mentions Park's textbook of community medicine mentions this particular classification. So please take into account this particular classification so that you need to understand about what is optimal, what is normal, what is isolated hypertension. Organ damage. Although the extent of organ damage often correlates with the level of blood pressure, it is not always the case. So we should understand many times we tend to relate the blood pressure with the organ damage. We say that if there is high blood pressure, there is organ damage. But there are conditions where the organ damage is found in high blood pressure, and sometimes the organ damage is also found in cases where there is normal blood pressure, but normal blood pressure. It means that organ damage is not directly related to blood pressure, but in many instances it has been found that if there is high blood pressure, there is definitely organ damage. So although the extent of organ damage often correlates with the level of blood pressure, it is not always the case. In addition, the rate of progression of organ damage varies from one individual to another, depending upon many influences, most of which are completely understood. So what it has been mentioned is the extent of organ damage with the rise of blood pressure or with the normal blood pressure varies in different persons because each individual is different from the other, and there are many influences which may have a role in organ damage which is not completely understood. So that is the reason, though we associate organ damage with high blood pressure, but it's not always the case when organ damage is found in the case of hypertension. Therefore, blood pressure and organ impairment should be evaluated separately, since markedly high pressures may be seen without organ damage, and conversely, as I related to you earlier, organ damage may also be present with moderate elevation of blood pressure. The presence of organ damage confers an increased risk to any level of blood pressure. So if there is an increased blood pressure and if there is an organ damage, the very presence of an organ damage itself magnifies the risk with the high blood pressure or any increase in blood pressure. Now, classification of hypertension by extent of organ damage. So we need to understand how are the organs affected in various stages of blood pressure. Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, as I mentioned earlier. So what are the manifestations of organ damage? We'll understand over here in this class. Stage 1, no manifestation of organ damage. Means if one is stage 1, we don't have any organ damage. So you don't find any organs being damaged because of the rise of blood pressure as mentioned in stage 1. Stage 2, at least one of the following manifestations of organ involvement. There is at least one of the manifestations of organ involvement. So there will be signs and symptoms of an organ involvement. So it can be in the form of left ventricular hypertrophy detected by X-ray or a radiogram, or an ECG, or an echocardiogram. Then there can be generalized and focal narrowing of the retinal arteries. We find retinal arteries also being narrowed because of this rise of blood pressure. Then there is microalbuminuria, which indicates damage to the kidney, proteinuria, and slight elevation of the plasma creatinine concentration. So microalbuminuria, proteinuria, slight elevation of the plasma creatinine concentration involves kidney involvement or renal involvement, and plasma creatinine concentration is 1.2 to 2 milligrams per decimeter. We have also have the ultrasound or radiological evidence of an atherosclerotic plaque, either in the aorta or the carotid artery or iliac or the femoral arteries. The large arteries are involved, and we find definitely an atherosclerotic plaque in that. Now, stage 3. Both symptoms and signs have appeared as a result of organ damage. These include heart, brain, optic fundi, kidney, and vessel. So, how is the heart affected? Heart affected by angina pectoris. We have a pain in the chest and myocardial infarction, and person going into a heart failure. So, angina pectoris, myocardial infarction, and heart failure indicate stage 3 hypertension. Then you have something called, if the brain is affected, there is stroke and transient ischemic attack, hypertensive encephalopathy, vascular dementia. Dementia because of the involvement of the arteries of the brain. Optic fundi, how the fundi are affected, how the fundus is affected. There will be retinal hemorrhages and exudates with or without papilledema, and these features are pathognomonic of the malignant or accelerated phase. So, malignant or the accelerated phase is indicated by retinal hemorrhages and exudates with or without papilledema. Kidney, plasma creatinine is more than 2 milligrams per liter, and there is also renal failure. So, more than 2 milligrams per liter, we have the plasma creatinine concentration. Earlier in stage 2, it would be between 1 to 2 milligrams per liter. But in stage 3, it will be definitely more than 2 milligrams per liter. And if it is more than 2 milligrams per liter, it indicates stage 3 hypertension. Then there is also renal failure. So you have the entire failure of the kidney. Then we have the vessel. Then we have a dissecting aneurysm and symptomatic arterial occlusive disease. So these are the various indications or various types of organ damage that are seen in various stages of hypertension, that is stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. Please try to follow this and remember about this particular field. Blood pressure measurement. Even with 75 years of experience of blood pressure, there is still a lacuna in understanding about the measurement of blood pressure uniformly throughout the world. And this has resulted in a kind of errors, and there are 3 sources of errors that have been identified as far as the recording of blood pressure is concerned. Observer errors, instrumental errors, and subject errors. So observer errors, definitely there will be a difference in the understanding of these errors. Usually the first sound that is heard, the first sound that is heard, that is Korotkov sound that is heard, which indicates phase 1, is taken as a systolic blood pressure, and stage 4, there is a muffling of sounds, Korotkov sounds, and the complete disappearance in phase 5 of Korotkov sounds. Phase 4 and phase 5 are taken as diastolic blood pressure. Many cases, a disappearance of Korotkov sounds are taken as diastolic blood pressure, and in many cases, muffling of the Korotkov sounds is taken as diastolic blood pressure. So there will be errors in the recording of the blood pressure as it is concerned, or here instrumental errors. There can be an error in the instrument there can be a leaking valve, the valve that is involved as far as the what you say, recording of blood pressure, it may result in an error, or it can be there is a or insufficient size of the blood pressure cuff that is there involved. Suppose the cuff is too small, then there will be incorrect reading of the blood pressure, and it may sometimes lead to high blood pressure. So instrumental errors like a leaking valve or a improper blood pressure cuff, as a sphygmomanometer cuff, the cuff which you tie around the mid forearm. So there will be some insufficient size. If it is either small, then it will result in instrumental error. Then subject errors. This depends upon the subject because of stress and other factors involved, anxiety that is involved, and and also the external condition may influence the subject. External condition, whether in a hospital or whether in a clinic, and surrounded by doctors or nurses or by interns or postgraduates. This external environment may also induce a sort of error in the recording of blood pressure in patients or subjects. Usually, 3 readings of blood pressure are taken in a period of 3 minutes, and the lowest recording is taken as the record of the blood pressure of the subject. And usually, as per the WHO study group, the practice that has to be that is commonly followed in clinics and hospitals consistently is either the right arm or the left arm. If the left arm is followed in the particular clinic or in the hospital, then the blood pressure of the left arm of all the patients or people coming to the hospital has to be taken. And if the right arm is taken for the measurement of blood pressure, then the right arm is followed. The recording of blood pressure, the right arm is followed in the clinic or in the hospital. So these errors are there are to be carefully seen while recording the blood pressure measurement, and care should be taken that these errors are avoided. Now, classification of blood pressure. So blood pressure is classified basically into primary or essential hypertension and secondary hypertension. Primary or essential hypertension constitutes around 90% of the hypertensive cases, and secondary hypertension constitutes around 10% of the hypertensive cases. So primary or essential hypertension, the cause is not exactly known, and most of the cases of hypertension fall under this particular category. So we don't know the cause. What is the exact cause which results in high blood pressure in primary cases of hypertension? And mostly cases of hypertension are mostly primary, as indicated over here. 90% of the cases are primary. Secondary is 10%, and this can be due to causes of the causes like involvement of the kidney, like chronic glomerulonephritis and chronic pyelonephritis, tumors of the adrenal gland, say pheochromocytoma, or it can be due to congenital narrowing of the arteries or the aorta, or it can be due to toxemia pregnancy, that is eclampsia, as we find in pregnancy. So what I'm trying to tell you is hypertension, we all of us have to know primary, that is essential hypertension, which constitutes around 90%, and secondary 10%. Essential hypertension, the cause is not known. The etiology of primary hypertension or essential hypertension is not known. Whereas in secondary hypertension, the cause is known. As I have said, it can be due to kidney, or it can be due to adrenal gland, or it can be due to toxemia pregnancy or congenital narrowing of the aorta or any of the arteries. Magnitude of the problem. Since the measurement of blood pressure involves a continuous variable, many a times we don't have the exact incidence in the prevalence of blood pressure in the population. So what we need to understand, about this particular problem by various ways. Rule of halves, very important. It comes as a short note in the examination. So please try to understand about this. as all of you know that hypertension is an iceberg disease. What do you mean by iceberg disease? Means the disease which conforms to the iceberg phenomenon. It means most of the cases what we see in the society or in the community are only the tip of the iceberg. Most of the and around 80 to 90% of the cases are submerged portion of the iceberg, which are not exactly seen in the community because of the various issues. So hypertension is an iceberg disease. Means there is a huge quantum of morbidity or huge quantum of hypertension, but only very few cases of hypertension present themselves to the clinician or to the physician, and that is what is being treated in the community. So what is rule of arms? So it has very become evident. So it was seen in way back in early 1970 in developed countries that about half of the hypertensive patients in the general population were aware of the condition. It means that half of the people of the half of the population of the developed countries were aware of the condition. Means only half were aware of a condition known as hypertension. So the other half were not aware. About half of them who were aware of the problem were being treated. And it means that people who were aware of hypertension, only half of them were being treated. And the other half were not treated. And about half of them who were treated were considered adequately treated. So you find half being there. So half of the general population are aware of the problem, and half of the population who are aware of the problem were treated, and half of the people who were treated were adequately treated. It means they were given proper drugs and proper dosage of drugs, and proper dosage of drugs for the proper periods of time. That is what is meant by adequately treated. Now you can see this thing. So what we find is the one represents the, you can see in this diagram, there are numbers marked in different parts of the circle. So number 1 represents the general community or the whole community. Number 2 is the normotensives. Number 3 is the hypertensives. So number 1 is the whole community. Number 2 is the normotensives, people who are having normal blood pressure. Number 3 is that the people who are having high blood pressure or people having hypertension. And number 4 represents undiagnosed cases of hypertension. It means number 4 represents people who are having hypertension but undiagnosed. Number 5 represents people who are diagnosed with hypertension. Number 6 represents exactly diagnosed but untreated. Number 7 represents diagnosed and treated. So number 6 represents diagnosed but untreated, but number 7 represents diagnosed and treated. Number 8 represents diagnosed but inadequately treated, and number 9 represents diagnosed and adequately treated. So this represents the various types of hypertension that is being involved in case of this thing. So the areas of the circle shown in the figure on the previous slide correspond to the actual proportions observed in several population-based studies and number-wise represent the following. So you have seen the various curves. Please try to go through that. So in one instance, it's very difficult for you to understand. Slowly you need to understand. So the outer circle represents the whole community. Then we have number 2, the normotensive. Number 3, the hypertensive. So number 4 represents the undiagnosed. Number 5 represents the diagnosed hypertension. Number 6 represents the diagnosed but untreated. Number 7 represents the diagnosed and treated. Number 8 represents inadequately untreated. Number 9 represents adequately treated. So what we find in this circle is there is a small portion of the entire population, that is number 9, which is diagnosed and adequately treated. So the people who are adequately treated represents a small portion of the circle. So that's what when we say adequately treated, they represent this much portion of the people are a part of the iceberg that is floating above, and they are treated with the necessary drugs and adequate doses of the drugs for bringing down hypertension in the community. So This portion represents the tip of the iceberg. The other entire portion represents the hidden portion of the iceberg, which are in different stages are being identified, diagnosed, treated, aware, not aware, always. Now, global scenario. What is the incidence and prevalence of this particular case? The concept of incidence has limited value, as I said earlier, because of the variability of readings in individuals, ambiguity of what is normal blood pressure, and the insidious nature of the condition. Because the readings vary, and because what we consider as normal and abnormal, and because of the slow progress of this condition, we are not exactly aware how to calculate incidence, because the disease proceeds very slow, and there is no what is normal and what is abnormal blood pressure. Prevalence of blood pressure. The global prevalence of hypertension was estimated to be 1.13 billion in 2015. So 2015, we have around 1.13 billion. So if the population of the entire globe is roughly to 6 to 6.5 billion, we have around 1.13 billion in this particular world. So 1.13 billion people are affected. This is the statistics of 2015. It needs to be updated. This is what we have the statistics over here. The overall prevalence of hypertension in adults is around 30 to 40% in the global, with a global standardized prevalence of 24 and 20% in men and women respectively. So what we need to understand is, in adults, it is 30 to 40% prevalence, and men having more prevalence of hypertension compared to women. Hypertension becomes progressively more common with advancing age, with a prevalence of more than 60% in people aged more than 60 years. So suppose if we take the prevalence of hypertension in people aged more than 60 years, we find that prevalence to be only 60% in the people. It is estimated that the number of people with hypertension will increase by 15 to 20% by the year 2025. And if it is seen that the prevalence of hypertension is going to increase by 15 to 20% by the year 2025, it means with the passage of time, now 5 years down the lane, we have more number of people who will be affected by hypertension. So we need to take care of ourselves by modification of our lifestyles and by understanding this particular problem, which is going to increase in a tremendous way as we go down the number of years from this year. Elevated blood pressure is a leading cause of premature death in 2015, accounting to around 10 million deaths and overall 200 million dialysis. So 10 million deaths have occurred because of a rise in blood pressure in 2015, and this has resulted in 200 million dialysis. Dialysis are nothing but disabled existing life years. It means the amount of the number of years of life that are spent with disability because of hypertension. There are 200 million dialysis. When we count the number of years of each person and add it up, we find around 200 million dialysis. So disability adjusted life years, because of disability induced by hypertension in a person, and you count the number of years with that disability and adding up to the disabilities, dialysis of all the people in the community, it comes to around 200 million dialysis. Systolic blood pressure, that is isolated blood pressure, systolic hypertension. More than 140 millimeters account for most of the mortality and disability burden. The largest number of systolic blood pressure related deaths per year are due to ischemic heart disease, that is around 4.9 million, hemorrhagic stroke 2 million, and ischemic stroke 1.5 million. So we find maximum who are affected are ischemic heart disease. This means ischemia related conditions, heart disease, which constitute around 4.9 million deaths, followed by 2 million deaths by due to hemorrhagic stroke, and ischemic stroke is 1.5 million. Ischemia is either due to embolism or due to a clot in the blood vessels, and hemorrhagic stroke is mostly due to the rupture of the blood vessels in the particular condition. Prevalence in India. In the year 2015 and 2016, as we see in the National Family Health Survey 4, measured blood pressure in women and aged 15 to 49 years. So based on the measurement during the survey, 11% of women were seen having hypertension, 61% of women were having high blood pressure with normal limits, and almost 30% were pre-hypertensive, and 1% were taking hypertensives. So the National Family Health Survey had taken a survey of people in the age group of 15 to 49 years, and those who are having, were diagnosed with high blood pressure, or those who are taking antihypertensive drugs. So the criteria was those who are having high blood pressure, those who are in the age group of 15 to 49 years, or those who are taking antihypertensives. So the prevalence of hypertension among men aged 15 to 49 years was somewhat higher among women. So women were found to be having higher blood pressure compared to that of men in this particular National Family Health Survey 4. 15% men were hypertensive, 43% had normal blood pressure, and same percentage were pre-hypertensive. 1% were on hypertensive medicines. The prevalence of hypertension in different people with different religions. Sikhs, we find 20% in men and 16% in women, and in Jains, we find 19% in men and 16% in women. And Buddhists, what we find is 19% in men. So among the different religions, what we have, especially the Sikhs, to be having high blood pressure, especially among men. 29% of obese women and 38% of obese men were found to be hypertensive in this survey. Prevalence of hypertension among women at 15 to 14 years ranges from 8% in Bihar to 18% in Sikkim and Assam. So typically it is more in Sikkim and the northeastern state of Assam. For men, the prevalence ranges from 6% in Delhi to 31% in Sikkim. So again, we find a higher incidence of prevalence of blood pressure in Sikkim, the state of Sikkim among men. For both men and women, the northeastern states, except the state of Meghalaya, have higher prevalence than the national average. This is about the prevalence of blood pressure among the different communities, among the different states, among men and women, in especially in our country. Now, what is tracking of blood pressure? Track. Why do you use the word track? So, if you track means you follow the particular person, and where particular person, say a male or a female. So you track means you try to find out his whereabouts from the initial stage to the final stage. The same thing here. What do you mean by tracking? Same thing applies over blood pressure. Tracking the blood pressure. If the blood pressures of individuals are followed up for a period of years, say from early adulthood into adult life, early childhood into adult life, then those individuals whose pressures were low in childhood were found to be low in adulthood, and those individuals whose blood pressures were high in childhood are found to be high in their adulthood. It means that those who are having low blood pressure in their earlier times of their lives are seen to have low blood pressure in their adult ages, and those who are having high blood pressure in the earlier ages of life are found to be having high blood pressure in later stages of life. In other words, low blood pressure tends to remain low, and high blood pressure tends to remain high as individuals grow older. This phenomenon of persistence of rank order of blood pressure is described as tracking. So this rank order of blood pressure, whatever rank or whatever category of blood pressure you are there in your earlier times, that is if the same blood pressure is persisting, that is what is meant by tracking. And this knowledge is very important in identifying children and adolescents at risk of developing hypertension at a future date. So tracking is a very important tool to identify people who can become hypertensive later in their lives by following up the blood pressure in their childhood. So this is the tracking of blood pressure. We find in the y-axis the blood pressure, and the x-axis that is the time. If during childhood if the blood pressure is low, it continues to remain low as with the subsequent years or in adulthood. If it remains low, if it remains slightly high, then it becomes slightly high, and if it remains high, it remains high with the high in adult age, and if it remains high in the childhood stage or children's stage, or in the earlier periods of time, then it tends to remain very high in their adulthood or in the later stages of life. So this is very important parameter or very important tool to understand uh, or when we apply various levels of prevention or management in the treatment of high blood pressure. So what are the risk factors for hypertension? So the WHO scientific group has identified various risk factors for essential hypertension. So they are divided again into non-modifiable and modifiable risk factors. So non-modifiable risk factors are age, sex, genetic factors, ethnicity, which we cannot change. There are immutable risk factors, the factors which we cannot change, and age. So age is an important risk factor we may find in both the sexes, that is males and females. So blood pressure is seen to increase with age and is mostly due to genetic influences and because of senescence, and blood pressure increases as we find in both the sexes as age increases. Sex, it is found that initially both the males and females were seen to have the same blood pressure levels, and in the adolescence the males are seen to have more high blood pressure compared to that of females, and especially in later stages of life, especially in postmenopausal stage, especially in women, the blood pressure is higher compared to that of men. It shows the role of estrogen in causing high blood pressure in females in the later age groups. Genetic factors. It has been seen that the inheritance of hypertension in people is mostly polygenic, and it has been observed in various twin studies and family studies. In twin studies, it has been seen that monozygotic twins have higher chance of high blood pressure compared to that of dizygotic twins. And in family studies, it has been seen that children of normotensive parents have a 3% chance of getting hypertension compared to children of hypertensive parents, where there is a chance of 40% of hypertension in those children who are born to hypertensive parents. So it means that children of hypertensive parents, there is a 40% chance of development of hypertension in the children. Ethnicity. There is a role of ethnicity as far as causation of hypertension. It has been seen that the blacks, especially the Negroes, are seen to have more blood pressure compared to that of the whites, and it has been seen that this rise in blood pressure is markedly seen in the second decade and also in later decades of life. In case of Africans staying in foreign countries or in other places, so definitely blacks have more chance of developing blood pressure compared to that of other races. Modifiable risk factors. The factors which can be modified by intervention or by lifestyle modification. Obesity. So obesity results in hypertension, especially the central obesity. So obesity, both in men and women, is responsible for causation of hypertension. Central obesity is an important risk factor for causation of hypertension. And it has been seen that a persons who reduce the waist circumference in men and women, there is every chance of reduction of blood pressure. Salt intake. High salt intake to the extent of 7 to 8 grams per day results in high blood pressure. And it has been observed that blood pressure is high in people who consume more than 400 millimoles per day, as in the case of Japanese, and communities which consume less than 60 millimoles of salt per day have low levels of blood pressure. And it has been seen that higher salt intake results in higher blood pressure. It has been seen that consumption of potassium-rich foods reduce the blood pressure, and there are other levels of blood pressure like calcium, cadmium, and magnesium, which may also result in hypertension. Saturated fat is responsible for causation of blood pressure. So more the saturated fat in the dietary intake, more is the chances of blood pressure, and it is mostly due to cholesterol and LDL cholesterol, which is responsible for rise in blood pressure. Dietary fiber is very important as far as the reduction of LDL cholesterol and cholesterol is concerned. So dietary fiber is an important aspect, and dietary fiber consumption should be increased to bring down the hypertension. Alcohol has been seen uh, to cause rise of blood pressure, as we have already seen in case of coronary heart disease, where the 75 milligrams per day consumption increases consumption per day results in coronary heart disease. Similarly, over here, alcohol results in hypertension. So, if people who consume less alcohol or cut down alcohol consumption, definitely there is a falling blood pressure. Heart rate, it is found to be more in hypertensive patients because of readjustment of sympathetic activity. So heart rate is definitely more in people with hypertension and people uh, in normal tenses the heart rate is normal or in a or is it in normal limits. Physical activity is seen to bring down obesity and bring down the weight of the person. So physical activity will results in lowering of blood pressure and thereby hypertension. Physical activity for a period of 30 minutes around 6 days a week is very important. So physical activity results in reduction of blood pressure. Environmental stress. There's no definition of stress, but environmental stress will result in psychosocial changes, and these psychosocial changes trigger the sympathetic overactivity, and this may result in rise in blood pressure. So, environmental stress is an indirect precursor for the rise of blood pressure. Socioeconomic status. In in pre-epidemiological transition. Remember, in epidemiological transition, there is something called pre-epidemiological transition and post-epidemiological transition. In the people in countries where there is pre-epidemiological transition, there is high blood pressure or hypertension in people of high socioeconomic status. But whereas with post-epidemiological, whereas people in countries of post-epidemiological transition means after the transition, uh, we find that the high blood pressure in those socioeconomic status. So in post-epidemiological transition, the blood pressure is inversely proportional to socioeconomic status. Blood pressure it has been also observed to be inversely proportional to education, occupation, and socioeconomic status, as we find later. In other factors which contribute to rise of high blood pressure is women consuming oral contraceptive pills. So those who are consuming doses of oral contraceptive pills for a long period of time, there is hypertension in those cases. Likewise, noise, vibration, temperature, and humidity also influence the blood pressure levels. This may result in high hypertension. When there is a noise, definitely there is increase in pulse rate and there is increase in blood pressure. Likewise, vibration, high temperatures, and high humidity may also result in high blood pressure among the population. So today we have discussed about what is the epidemiology of hypertension, what is the definition of hypertension, what is the classification of hypertension, what is the organ damage related to hypertension, what are the various risk factors for hypertension, say non-modifiable and modifiable risk factors. Please read this thoroughly so as to understand and do by heart the classification of blood pressure, and also most important the short notes, that is tracking of blood pressure and rule of horse. Very common short notes that come in the examination. Please do follow them. And also modifiable and non-modifiable risk factors come as a part of the long question examination. Thank you for your patient hearing. The rest of the class will be followed in the rest of the lecture will be followed in the subsequent lecture class. Thank you very much.